Hello everyone, my name is Ronzi. Welcome back to another episode of Co-Star, and today we're going to take a closer look at the 2019 Ford Edge Titanium. Let's roll the clip.
Darling, you send me. Darling, you send me. Darling, you send me. You send me. Darling, you send me. Darling, you send me. I know.
Welcome back everyone. I hope you all enjoyed the cinematic we did for the 2019 Ford Edge. And wow, it is cold today. We're currently at Bolton, courtesy of Fines Ford for letting us using this vehicle today for a full review. Now the Ford Edge started here in Canada at around 2006 and it is also assembled in Oakville, Ontario. Canadian pride here for the Ford Edge. Now we're in the second generation, which got the redesign in 2015. Now 2019, the exterior and interior styling has been, changed, refined, and upgraded a little bit as well. I mean, looking at the front, everything looks more sharp, more masculine, and the lines definitely look a lot more defined. The nose is probably the most significant change to the front bumper, bigger and also done in chrome for the additional masculine and dominant look of the Ford Edge. And here's something that I really like in the front bumper is this chiseled chin part over here painted in black. Of course, here's where the fog light is, but this part is also done with 3 lines over here, giving the additional grooves and more of a defined look for the lines. For the headlights, you have a pair of LED daytime running lights and LED headlights, but here's something that's very interesting and maybe only for the Canadian market. We're seeing some fogging in the lens housing over here, so maybe a manufacturer defect, we don't know, but I feel like that this shouldn't happen, especially on a brand new vehicle, right? For the hood, as you can see, more sculpted, more defined lines, and I like that a lot. And I like this dip and groove over here on top or at the center of the hood. Moving at the profile of the vehicle, we have a brand new 20-inch aluminum alloy wheel slapped on with some Scorpion Verde all-season tires here in Canada. Right now it's perfect because there's no snow, so these tires fit perfectly in the weather condition here in Canada. The aluminum alloy wheels are done in 2 tones. Number 1 is silver, and number 2 is kind of like a machine gray finish on the inner spoke of the wheel. 10 spoke as well. Wait, is it 10 spoke? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Yes, 10 spoke as well. 20-inch, very nice. For the profile of the vehicle, you're going to see more of that defined lines over here. Very sharp, very masculine, and also inviting you to the rear side of the vehicle from the bottom lower piece over here. One thing that we discovered on the profile of the vehicle is that you have to really use some force to close the doors. So right now, as you can see, there's some creases that are left and some gaps in between the doors, so you have to really slam the door for the door to be closed. Before we go back there, what do we have here? Capless fuel tanks. Finally, I like that feature a lot. And just in case you forgot to turn the cap for the old traditional way, capless fuel tanks give you the convenience that you will always have your cap open and closed whenever you want it. Moving at the rear side of the vehicle, 2 things you're going to notice. Number 1 is the standalone taillights over here. From the previous years, this is all one piece across the trunk in 2016, 2017, 2018 for the Ford Edge. Number 2 is the dual exhaust chrome tips. I like that a lot. Very nice and very sporty look for it. And from the chiseled chin in the front, you have the chiseled rear part on the rear bumper as well for the added personality of the Ford Edge. Over here, you have the spoiler painted in 2 tones, red to match the car and black to match the windshield. And here's something that's very interesting. This piece right here that connects window to the rear lower side of the tailgate is painted in black. I like that a lot. Gives the car more personality instead of painting this or leaving it red or other color, right? I don't like this chrome part over here. That's just my personal preference. And because we're looking at the titanium trim line, this car has a hands-free power tailgate. Simply motion your leg over here and bam, look at how quick the technology responds to it. I like that a lot. Looking at the trunk, very spacious, but what I really like about the inner trunk of the Ford Edge are the push button folding rear seats. As you can see, the seat folds 60/40, additional convenience. But what I like is that hopefully they'll add in the future is that if you press the button over here, the seat will come back up. I think once you have that, it kind of completes the overall rear cargo space for convenience and luxury a little bit. And here's another faulty part on the all-new Ford Edge is that the trunk doesn't close all the way, and you have to really push it for it to stay closed. And just like the headlights in the front, the rear taillights do have some fogging here on the interior lens housing as well. So I hope that the manufacturer do resolve this issue for the future models. And maybe this only happens in Canadian models right here in Canada. So we don't know, but hopefully it'll get fixed. Now let's take a look at the interior of the all-new Ford Edge. Sitting in the interior of the 2019 Ford Edge, you're going to notice two significant changes. Number one is the Bang and Olufsen sound system, 12 speakers, super crisp, and we all know that they're made by Harman and Kardon. I think those sound systems are found in very luxurious cars like BMW 5 Series, 7 Series, and now they're putting it in the Edge. I think that kind of opens up a lot of possibilities for American cars to have a partnership with audio systems in Europe. I think that by replacing the Sony, it definitely makes the everyday music day-to-day commute a lot more enjoyable. Second thing you're gonna notice is this transmission gear selector going from the stick to the scroll. I think it would be really cool if you turn on the car and this thing pops up like you find in Aston Martins or in other luxurious vehicles, right? That would be super cool to see if that actually happens on a Ford Edge. But for me, personal preference, I still like the stick gear selector, but this is still better than push button that we found on the Lincolns. Behind it, you have your electronic parking brake, which you can turn on and off manually. For me, I like it if I were to park the car from drive to park and this automatically engage like how I have it in my Toyota Corolla, right? And below it, you have your auto start and stop for your engine. The auto hold function is actually an additional feature to be added on to your Ford Edge. This kind of design over here is flat, but also kind of make the overall space feels a lot bigger, right? But Ford's reason for having this scroll selector over here is that they want to have the wireless charging pad added and additional 2 USB port. Here's something I really love about Ford is that the technology is so quick to activate. By placing my phone onto the wireless charging pad, it takes less than literally a second for it to activate. Bam, immediate charging right away. You don't have to press any button. You don't have to, wait for it to activate. It just goes as soon as you want to activate it. Essentially, of course, this car is compatible with Apple CarPlay and Android Auto by just simply connecting to the USB port over here, and bam, you have it right there in front of you. I think that's still pretty quick than the average technology on the market. But the center console, for me, I feel like it's a little bit boring. Does that kind of make sense, guys? I feel like it needs some kind of distinction from the rest of the Ford vehicles or the Ford models, right? The air vents on the side has been, refined and retuned a little bit for the 2019 model, but for the rest of the buttons over here, it just feels very empty as well, right? You have additional storage compartment over here by pressing the button, and you can store your keys, wallet, phone, whatever you want. For the bottom, you have your heated seats, but if you want vented seat, it is an additional option that you gotta pay more, right? You also have your dual zone climate control, all that stuff. Now this car is saturated with leather steering wheel, leather seats, power adjustable and memory seats. And what I love about the seats is that they have this white stitching that runs across some of the panels over here. Additional luxurious feel. I like that a lot. Looking up ahead, you do have your panoramic sunroof, which is a standard option here for the Ford Titanium. Overall feeling very good. Interior is more or less the same, but very spacious. And by removing the stick gear selector over here and making the scroll, I do feel like the frontal cabin is a lot more spacious. At least I feel a lot more spacious than the previous year. For the Titanium, you have your standard navigation, backup camera, and there's other settings over here that you can change, which is the ambient lighting, so you can customize your Ford Edge a little bit more. The ambient lighting, unfortunately, we can't see right now because it's daytime, but essentially over here by the cup holders, small areas here and there that you can really see the color change and suit whatever your personality is. Here's something interesting about the rear seat of the Ford Edge is that they feel very heavy, so you have to use some force to push it back up. Now, I do wish the rear have heated seats, but that's an additional option that you have to purchase and add on to your Ford Edge. I mean, The leg space and head space is great, but that's what I expect for a mid-size SUV. Very comfortable. The front seats is adjusted to the way that I drive on a day-to-day basis. You have some air vents here and there. You do have your center compartment for your cup holders, and the other cup holders are found on the bottom lower of your door panel over here. I do wish that the cup holders are a little bit higher, so I am always reminded to take my drink or my cup whenever I exit the vehicle, right? So what do we have underneath the hood, guys? We have a turbocharged 4-cylinder engine, EcoBoost, giving you 250 horsepower and 280 pound-feet of torque. For the ST model, we have a 2.7-liter V6 turbocharged as well, giving you 355 horsepower and 380 pound-feet of torque. Now, the previous years, we do have a 3.5-liter V6 naturally aspirated engine that has been discontinued here in 2019 and moving on forward. I mean, I do think Ford is going with the EcoBoost engine in more and more of the vehicles and models, but what does EcoBoost really mean? Two things, eco or boost, right? The name is pretty straightforward. The transmission is an 8-speed automatic transmission. It is brand new, replacing the old 6-speed automatic transmission for the previous years. There is a sport button on top of the scroll selector, and the sport essentially just engages the transmission with your paddle shifters. The paddle shifters are so underwhelming that you have to really reach in your hand over here and really engage it. And the paddle shifter also correlates with the RPM range on the dash, right? And it took me a little bit to figure out where exactly is the RPM gauge because it is so small, right? So even if I want to push this vehicle, woo, 6,000 RPMs. The shift to the next gear is actually quite slow, and you do have some rev hang in the transmission of the Ford Edge. But the RPM dials over here, or the RPM gauge, so small, so hard to see, so you're not even sure when exactly you need to switch gears from your paddle shifter. So I really hope that the Ford Edge do kind of refine the RPM gauge for the next year or the next generation, right? I mean, the dashing front, I do feel is a little bit outdated. Like I said, with the infotainment system or the center console over here do need some kind of refinement or redesign a little bit. So if they were to change up these two, it'll make the Ford Edge stand on top of its class, right? Now this car is also equipped with Ford Co-Pilot 360, which is the first vehicle that Ford has put this technology in there. So what is included? Blind spot monitoring, lane keep assist, rear view camera, but if you want a 360 degree, you gotta pay more for that as an option for the Ford Edge. Not too bad. I really wish that this car did have the lane centering with the adaptive cruise control, which pretty much makes this vehicle somewhat autonomous or semi-autonomous, and I think that's a great feature for the car to have, especially you're on a long drive. And I think that by having that kind of option, you do kind of alleviate some driving fatigueness, and you can travel a long distance if you were to have lane centering, pairing that with the adaptive cruise control. The steering wheel, guys, there's 22 buttons on the steering wheel, and it's kind of overwhelming. But you know, I don't really see the point of having all these buttons on my steering wheel. I kind of like simplicity, and I kind of like that if you were to have less buttons but with more functions, that in turn will create a better driving experience, especially the steering wheel, that when you look at it, it's a very simple and elegant design versus when you look at this, saturated with buttons right in front of you, kind of take you away of the simple design of the steering wheel. Now the suspension in the Ford Edge is the McPherson suspension setup, and for anyone who's unfamiliar with this platform, it does two things. Number one, it is very economical and easy to manufacture, and number two, it is very beneficial for front wheel drive vehicles because of the spacing in the front, and you can add a frontal drive shaft. For the Ford Edge, front-wheel drive is standard across all trims with the option of all-wheel drive, you know, if you want to pay a little bit more money for your Ford Edge. Driving this car, suspension feels great, very soft, and I like that a lot, especially driving this car as a day-to-day commuter vehicle here in the GTA. I mean, that's kind of the assumption I get whenever I drive SUVs, is that the suspension should be soft and should be comfortable. For some of the other manufacturers on the market, especially the luxury performance SUV like the SQ platform from the Audi, the XM vehicles from the BMW and AMG, you can select between comfort, normal, and sport, that would change up your suspension and reactiveness to the road, right? But what Ford did is that they made the suspension the same across all trim level, so you know exactly what you're getting into as soon as you get inside the vehicles, right? So there isn't really a change between sport and normal or even comfort, right? So one suspension, all trim, so you know exactly what you're getting yourself into. So that's it for me today, guys. I hope you all enjoyed the review and the cinematic we did for the 2019 Ford Edge. And if there's anything that you like I may have missed, leave it in the comment below so we can start a conversation. Hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, and I will see you on a brand new episode of Cold Start next Saturday.